Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. Again, today I'm your co host, Mike Bailey, along with Ellen DePlacido. Ellen, are you there?
I am.
So, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we want to kind of talk about some early season pest control.
Okay, and we've done a little bit of this before, but
Mm-hmm.
but now that you have most of your garden planted by this time, we thought it's probably time to take a good shot at maybe some reminders here. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
the first section is about some four-legged pests. Okay, those things that some mammal-type creatures. Okay, and I'm going to take the larger ones. I'm going to give the smaller ones to Ellen. but
Thank you.
but as far as the larger ones are concerned, we're talking deer and rabbits and woodchucks and groundhogs or whatever you want to call them. For those things, fence is the best answer by far. And you can say, well, I did a fence, but the deer jumped over it. Well, what you got to do is you got to extend that fence up a little bit. And if you just take some poles and extend that fence up a little bit, somehow 2 or 3 feet, okay, and then just take some
Hmm.
regular string. Doesn't have to be heavy weight. It's just a visual barrier. If they see that visual barrier, they're going to be entirely less inclined to jump over that. So give that a try. I've done that successfully with my gardens. So you should try it with yours if you're having a problem with deer. So what about the little
Okay.
creatures, the little fuzzy little things?
Well, those smaller animals are the voles and the chipmunks in particular. And voles are Voles. And they are especially destructive. And unfortunately, probably the best solution for both of these are live traps. Okay. In fact, they're probably the only solution. And the voles like to eat the vegetation and they damage quite a few plants in a very short period of time. So if you want to catch those voles, which I'm sure you do, you want to bait your traps with some peanut butter along with oatmeal pressed into the peanut butter. And that seems to be really effective. And that's something new for me. I didn't realize that. And the other one, the chipmunks, they don't usually eat your plants, but they do dig and they bury seeds, and that creates a problem. So traps that chipmunks kind of like are baited with the plain peanut butter or a slice of apple, and those two will usually work to help trap those chipmunks.
Yes, and when you said live traps, we really,
Mm-hmm.
really don't mean live traps. We mean, the regular mice traps that unfortunately send them to their reward in the
Yeah.
sky.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
and if you look at the literature, and I've researched it for a lot of people, there just really isn't a better solution. It's unfortunate,
No.
but
Uh-uh.
whatever. But they can do a lot of damage if you have a big
Mm-hmm.
infestation, especially chipmunks. And don't let them get in your
Mm-hmm.
house and start that. So it can be a
Yeah.
problem. So what about some
Right.
of our insects? Uh, you know, the first one I guess we want to talk about is that cutworm. And a
Uh-huh.
cutworm is the larva, of the cutworm moth, and its larva and the pupa overwinter in the soil. And what they do when they come out when the weather starts to get warm in the spring, they'll actually come to the surface and they'll actually cut a plant off right at the surface and consume it right then, or they'll drag it down into a hole. So so when you're putting in your broccoli and your cabbage, etc., and all of a sudden the plants disappear, it might be the cutworms, okay, that are getting it. So what do? You can make a cardboard collar. And a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of putsy work, yes, but you take something about 3 or 4 square inches and you cut a line to the center of that, and you cut it a little bit, a few different ways right at the center. So place for
Mm-hmm.
that stem, if you will, and you place that around the plant and cover the edges up with a little bit of soil. That'll keep them from getting at the stem of that plant. That works,
Mm-hmm.
as does some crushed eggshells and this diatomaceous earth, which is really the fossilized remains of the tiny aquatic organisms, okay, called diatoms. It's pieces of shell, if you will, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is, but I've had the best luck with the collars. But what
Oh,
about
okay.
flea beetles?
Flea beetles. Okay. And that's exactly what they are. They're little small period-sized bugs that like to hop, and they hop from leaf to leaf or plant to plant. And those adults can overwinter in weeds and brush, which is one of the reasons I stress clean your garden. Usually, they're more of a springtime pest, and they like tomatoes and eggplants in particular. So some ways to control those, if they get bad enough and you have to control them, the sticky traps, some neem oil, horticultural oil, spinosad, or carbaryl 7. That's probably the best things, items that you could use to help control if they become an
You're right.
infestation.
And they like young leaves, young tender leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And as the
Mm-hmm.
season progresses, they typically don't, cause a problem unless you have a large infestation. Now, I had a
Mm-hmm.
large infestation last year. I was surprised, but it
Oh, wow.
only attacked a few of my eggplants. So, and they didn't bother anything else. So that wasn't too bad. Now, cabbage
Mm-hmm.
worms, that's another story. And there's several, varieties of these. And as the worms themselves are typically green or a little brownish, okay, because there's three or four different varieties of these things, and they overwinter again as larvae and pupae in the garden soil. And there's a number of different moths, okay, three or four different moths, types of moths that lay these eggs. One of them in particular, you see these little white butterflies that are flitting around the garden chasing each other. Uh,
Oh, aren't they cute?
yeah, aren't they cute? Well, that is probably the most prolific one, at least for me it is. And they'll lay
Uh-huh.
eggs on those, your cabbage and your broccoli and your cauliflower in particular, and those eggs hatch within 4 or 5 days, and it's a small little worm, that green little worm or brownish little worm, and they'll just start. They got a big appetite. They love to chew holes in the leaves of those plants. Now, how do you control those things? Well, you can control the moths if you want to. The little white things are the ones that are only ones that are open flit around during the day. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones, okay, kind of are nighttime flyers, and you can chase them around your garden if you want with a fishing net, okay, like I've been known to do. but I figure if hey,
I even got you one too, didn't
yes,
I?
if yes you do. If I can catch a couple of those pairs, okay, I'm eliminating a lot of eggs. Is what I'm doing. It saves me a lot of grief, but it looks a little funny. The other thing that you can do is look at the bottom of the leaves of your cabbage leaves or your broccoli leaves, etc., and you can see those little eggs, which are the size of a period at the end of a sentence. You can just squash those. I had the kids at a
Mm-hmm.
school garden do that once, and we virtually eliminated, the problem of the worms because the kids were so happy to go in there and crush all the eggs. They
Ooh,
come out to
this
the
is
garden
fun.
and they go bang, 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 bang. They did it. It was great. They did a good job. But BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, is which is in a powder or a liquid, is very, very effective, and it's a biological. Okay, so don't not grow broccoli. Broccoli is wonderful. So are cabbages and things like that. And some people say I have too many worms. Well, it's easy. It's easy to control. Now, what about slugs?
Well, slugs are very interesting. There are several varieties of them, but basically they're colored from tan to brown. They overwinter either as adults or eggs in the soil and, again, garden debris. So they really like that moist organic material and they eat holes in the leaves of the host plants. Um, they're kind of ugly. I think we all know what slugs look like. But iron phosphate compounds control slugs. And believe it or not, one of the names of that compound is Slug-O or Slug Magic. But one thing you can do is sprinkle the slugs with salt, and those slugs will dissolve. That salt will dissolve the slugs. So, a couple little things that you can do, but slugs can be kind of damaging also
Yeah. So
to your
so there's
plants.
that's good reminders about four or five different things. So Ellen, we've went way above, beyond our time. So sorry to all the parties involved, but we thought this was kind of important. So thank you for listening.